Friends, in Agile, there is something called as Architectural Runway. So what is Architectural Runway and what is its significance? This is a very, very important interview question, and by the end of this video, you will know how to answer it. I will answer this question very conceptually. I won't answer it like a definition. Let us see that conceptually. So when we were in the waterfall world, we had a functional requirement document and a technical requirement document. Sorry, functional specification document and technical specification document. Okay, so in the technical specification document, we had the entire knowledge of how this application's architecture is going to be. Okay, so it is in technical specification document. Okay, but when we came to Agile, we said both these documents are not required. Instead of functional requirement document or functional specification document, we will have something called as product backlog. We will have stories, and all these stories will be made on the runtime while we are still developing the product. The stories will still be created and they will be refined. I mean, their acceptance criteria will be added, subtracted, something will happen to it, modified, and they will also be ranked subjective to each other. Relative to each other, they will be ranked. Okay, so the product backlog is a live thing. It is being refined as you are working on the product. Okay, so functional specification document is not required. Likewise, we said technical specification document is also not required. We will improve the architecture of the product as and when we are building it. Okay, but this posed a huge problem. I'll tell you why. See, there are a few things at least which you should confirm right in the beginning, and those few things that you should confirm is called as architectural runway. Like if you're building a Amazon kind of a website, then there are a few things that you should confirm right at the beginning. I'll tell you what. First thing, you decide which technology you're going to use. Like there will be a UI layer, API layer and database layer. Okay, so in the UI layer, are you using React or are you using Angular, or are you using something like Vue.js or something like that? Okay, so first decide which is the technology we want to use in the UI layer. Likewise, in the API layer, are you going to use Java or .NET or Node.js? You should decide that. Okay, right in the beginning. You cannot do this that, a few iterations you will use Node.js in API and React in the UI, and then later you say, oh, Node.js is very old now, I'm not going to use that, something else has come, so let me use that. And maybe in the UI layer also, okay, React, I've lost all the interest in React now, I'll go to Angular. You cannot do that. See, if the UI layer is to be rewritten from React to Angular, it is a total rewrite. You are completely rewriting the code. That means you are almost making that application all over again. So it's a very wrong thing to do. So you have to decide this right in the beginning, which technology you are going to use. Likewise, in the database layer also, you should decide right in the beginning that I'm using SQL or Oracle or MongoDB. Decide it right in the beginning. Otherwise, see, if you are first using SQL and then you have to migrate to MongoDB, oh my God, you have to rewrite the whole database layer. It's a whole waste of time, right? Waste of time, effort, energy. Don't do that. So there is something that you decide right at the beginning, that what technology I'm going to use. So that technology is the first part of architectural runway. Then there is a second part of architectural runway, which is how you are implementing your solution. That means the basic architecture of that product. For example, in the API layer, let us say there are 3 layers of APIs. First layer of API is the APIs which actually speak to the UI. Okay, so their API responses will be aligned with the page fields. Let us say there is a page on which there are some 10 fields. Okay, let us say it is a customer details kind of a page, wherein all the customer details like name, age, address, PIN, mobile number, all these details are being displayed. Okay, so these are customer details, right? So your API response, suppose there is an API having giving you the customer details. Okay, so its response should have these fields only, right? If it has some additional fields, then it is of no use. Besides, any user facing API should never give excessive information, right? Because otherwise it will be very vulnerable to the attack, means hacking attack. So it is always better that you give only as much as is needed on that page. So in layer 1 APIs, you make the API responses very much aligned with the page. Similarly, this is a kind of a get call wherein you are getting the information. Let us say there is a post call also where I am filling the information of a new customer. So there is a add new customer page. So in this, all these fields I am adding. So it's a post call. Even in this post call, whatever is the API, its request will be accepting only those fields which I am providing. I cannot have a field which is not there on the page only. How will I give that information, right? So all the get calls as well as post calls in the layer 1 APIs will be very much aligned with how the UI is, okay, very much aligned with the fields on the UI. Okay, so that is called as layer 1 APIs, but they only give and take the information from and to the UI. Okay, they do not do any business logic. So for doing the business logic, you have layer 2 APIs. They will only do business logic. So all your core business logic will be there in layer 2 APIs. And then they will still not speak to the database. Suppose you have to save that customer's data in the database. Business APIs won't do that. Business APIs will only calculate of certain things. Like suppose it is a customer and you have to calculate its area, that it is in Asia Pacific or it is in Middle East. You have to calculate the area, or maybe suppose if it is a banking product, then you have to calculate the interest, or let us say it is a medical product, then you have to calculate the medical insurance term, something like that. So all this business logic will be there in layer 2 APIs. It will be calculating things. Okay, it will be calculating things based on 2 or 3 fields. It will create some other fields. Okay, so that is what it will do. Business logic, your actual business content is there in layer 2. Now these layer 2 APIs are not exposed directly to the UI, so they are very safe from attack. Hacking attacks won't happen on layer 2. Why? Because how is it possible? You are not exposing them directly. The hacker doesn't even know that such an API exists, so he won't be able to call that API. Okay, and besides, you will also be disabling calling this API directly from the even from UI or from Postman. You cannot call it because they will be only called through any other API. So that security is also there. And level 3 APIs are the APIs who only speak to the database, who will get the data from the database or who will post the data onto the database. So all the CRUD operations of the database will be done by the layer 3 APIs. Okay, so this is your architecture. This is your basic architecture of your API layer. This also has to be decided right in the beginning, because if you don't decide this in the beginning and if you start developing, few iterations have gone, you've already done some coding, and now you are saying, oh, now split those APIs into layer 1, layer 2, layer 3. It's almost a rewrite. People will have to rewrite the same thing because they will be writing monolithic APIs right from UI till business layer till your database. They'll be writing one API. Okay, now after you say that, oh, now they should be split into 3 layers, then the same API will have to be broken down into 3 pieces, right? And then similar APIs will have to be clubbed together into one API. So it's a rework. Why do you want to do that rework? Think about this right in the beginning. So this is the second part of your architectural runway, which is the basic architecture of your product. Various layers, basic architecture of every layer has to be decided right in the beginning. Third thing is few things like, few good practices, few design patterns. They have to be decided right in the beginning. Like for example, people use microservice architecture. You have to decide this right in the beginning. What is microservice architecture? I will explain in this particular video. But if you have to implement the microservice architecture, then you have to do this right in the beginning. You cannot say that, okay, previously for a few iterations I will be developing big APIs, and then I'll say, oh, now split that into micro pieces. That API should be split into small pieces and they should be independently deployable. You cannot do that. It's a rework. So decide upon this also right in the beginning. So which design patterns you are going to use, that also, or which coding standards you are going to use, that also, you should decide right in the beginning. At least something you decide. Later on, these design patterns may improve, your coding guidelines can improve, all these things may improve, but these will be architectural enabler stories. If you know, in SAFe there are 4 kinds of enablers, right? So exploratory, architectural, infrastructure, and then compliance enablers. So out of them, the second type, that is the architectural enablers, these are the enablers which lead to change in the architectural runway. Okay, so decide this also, that which design patterns you are going to use. This is also a part of your architectural runway. So let us summarize the questions, the answer now. So when you are asked what is architectural runway and what is its importance, so you will be saying, see, architectural runway consists of 3 things. First is which technology you are going to use. Second is what is a basic architecture or various layers in your application. And third thing is which design patterns you are going to use. Okay, and what is its significance? Its significance is that in the waterfall model, we knew the whole architecture of the product using the technical specification document. But in Agile, there is no technical specification document. Even the architecture of the product keeps growing as we are developing it. Okay, but there should be a few things which are confirmed right in the beginning, so that rework of that same thing can be avoided. Okay, means if you change the technology sometime after 6 months, then all the 6 months work that you do, that will have to be rewritten. The work will go for a waste, and to avoid this, we specify a few things right in the beginning, and that is called as architectural runway. Now let us go to the Bookish definition. That means the definition given in scaledagileFramework.com, that is the official website of SAFe. Architectural runway consists of existing code, component and technical infrastructure needed to implement near-term features without excessive redesign and delay. Okay, means it is something to implement, which is needed to implement near-term features. We are still not saying it will be sufficient to develop the entire product. No, I don't know, but at least near-term features it can deliver. Okay, at least whatever I have thought of in the near term, yeah, these things are going to deliver them. Okay, without excessive redesign and delay. Redesign may be there, but very negligible. Like for example, I have said I'll be using React in the UI layer. Okay, but now React 14 was there, now React 15 has come. Okay, so I will have to uplift my React layer. Okay, so that is a redesign only. Okay, but it is not very excessive. Changing the version of React is not very excessive. You will first have to have a exploratory enabler, that means a spike story, and you will have to check that, okay, what all things will change if I upgrade, what all components will stop working, and then you will be creating various stories that, okay, this component will stop working, create a story to make it working. This component will stop working, make a story to create to get it working. This way you will create more stories. Okay, so all these stories are what? All these stories are, see, first story was exploratory enabler because it was a spike story. All the other stories will be architectural enablers because they'll be changing your architecture, right? Also there will be one more story that, after exploratory story, there will be one story that will now uplift the version. First uplift it, and then there will be various stories to make other components work, and when your branch is stable, then it will be deployed. Okay, so this is the way of development. This is a way of uplifting the React from one version to another. Okay, so this is what there will be some redesign, but it is not very excessive. So you decided on the technology, that is your architectural runway, that I will be using React. It doesn't mean you will be using React 14 only. In the future, if React 16 comes, of course you will go to React 16. Of course you will be having exploratory enabler and many architectural enablers. You will be having them. So it is a redesign, but not excessive. Okay, and besides, you still don't know whether these code component and technical infrastructure are sufficient to build your entire product. You don't know, but at least you have a fairly good idea that okay yaar, I feel whatever I know the product at the moment, I think it will be developed with this particular technology. So that is my architectural runway. It will be developed using these this particular architecture of various layers. Yeah, that is sufficient. So okay, that is my architectural runway. It will be developed using these all design patterns. So yeah, those design patterns are my architectural runway. Okay, so Bookish definition says it is existing code, components or technical infrastructure. How will you remember this? See, first of all, technical infrastructure. Okay, so that means whatever technology you are using, like you are using React and Java and SQL, this is the combination you are using, that is your technical infrastructure. Let us say in between the database and the API there is entity framework or NHibernate, whatever it is. Like you are using Java, so you will be using NHibernate. If you are using .NET in API layer, then you will be using entity framework. So this stack, technical stack, is what? Your technical infrastructure. So this is how you will remember the last line. Last thing, technical infrastructure. Second thing is components. How will you remember components? Components means, guys, like these layers of APIs, these are what? Components. Like they even call it differently. Like I am saying layer 1, layer 2, layer 3, people call them different things. They call them like business APIs, they call them database APIs or DAL layer, they call it as UI APIs or something like that, user facing APIs, something like that. Okay, so this is one thing. Even in the UI layer also similar things can be there. Like there can be some shared components, like even in React you can make a library of some React components. Okay, and whenever you require to use any component on the page, then you use the components given in that particular library which you yourself have created. Okay, so in this way all the applications created by you or for this particular customer will all look alike, because all of them will have similar buttons with similar behavior. They will have similar, suppose there is a slider, then it will look similar. There is any kind of filter, so slider can be one filter. Then let us say there are check boxes, there are radio buttons, it all look similar no matter which application you make for that client. And that is why this kind of components, libraries are important. So component, this is how you will remember component word. Existing code means like your design patterns are there. So whatever design pattern you are using, that is the existing code, right? For example, if you are saying that there is a microservice architecture to be used, so what does that mean? What it means is every API will be independently deployable. That means every API will have a separate Git repo. Okay, it will have a separate Jenkins pipeline. Okay, if that API is failing, then only that API is failing, you can redeploy it, the whole application won't crash. Okay, so instead of monolithic APIs, you use a micro service architecture. Every API is micro, every service is microservice. It will work independently of all the other services. So this is what? This is your existing code. So this is the existing code on top of which you will build the application. So your UI layer will be based on this kind of a microservice architecture. Even your UI will be like that only. See, if you see Spotify, the concept of Spotify. So Spotify is what? Spotify, by Spotify I don't mean the music app. Of course there is a music app called Spotify, but it has also that Spotify music app has only inspired people that how that company has used scaled agile. So they are not using scaled agile framework alone, they have tailor made it for their company, and whatever is their tailor-made way of working in Agile, that is called as Spotify. So what Spotify says is even your UI should be such that it is made up of small components. All these components should be independently deployable. So your team, now they call team as squad. So let us say your squad, and they call art as tribe. So your squad or your art is working on one of the small pieces or one of the small places in the UI. Okay, and it is independently deployable. This is what Spotify says, that okay, keep everything independent. So just like I was saying, microservice architecture should be there in the API layer. Similarly, Spotify says okay, that kind of an architecture should be there in the UI layer as well. So all this is what? This is your existing code, guys. This is the way you're coding. So that is your existing code. Okay, so this is how you will remember. So what is the definition? Once again, architectural runway is the existing code, that means this kind of layering, components, like let us say you are using shared components in the UI, and technical infrastructure that is required. Technical infrastructure means like you are using React, or you are using Java in the API, you are using SQL in the database. So that is your technical infrastructure needed to implement the near term features without excessive redesign and delay. So with that we complete this particular topic. I know I have explained it in great detail, unnecessarily great detail, but still, at least if your funda becomes clear, then you can pick one word and write an essay about it. Okay, but your concept should be clear. See, in the interview you don't require to be bookish. What you require is you should have a clear idea, and even if you understand 10% of what I just said, you will pass this question. Okay, and that's why I explained this in great detail. Until next time, this is Amit signing off. Jai Shri Ram.